He said he'd fight for you. Yet costs are rising, families are struggling, while he's getting richer. He said no new wars, but bombs keep dropping. It was all a lie. Weak, failing, desperate to distract from the truth.
I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else.
He thinks he's above the law. On March 28th, send a message, Mr. President. This is America. We don't do kings.
And welcome to the live stream of the No Kings 3 virtual pep rally. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Joe Carducci. I'm your host for this evening. We have an incredible lineup for this event. And if you do me a favor and just put, where you're from, where you're going to be marching on Saturday and why you're going to be marching on Saturday. This one is going to be even bigger than the last two, which were massive. And with that, let's get started by welcoming our first guest. We have the co-founder of Indivisible, Ezra Levin, with us this evening. I'm so excited to see you.
Hey, Joe. It's great to see you, too.
Number 3. And this one, holy moly.
Yeah, it's incredible. Look, every single time it feels historic because it is the first No Kings protest, had 2,100 protests all around the world. That was at the time the largest protest in American history. Then a few months later for No Kings 2, we had 2,700 protests around the world, which was then the largest protest in American history. Joe, as I talk to you right now, on the map at nokings.org, there are 3,267 protests for Saturday all around the world. It's incredible. The sadistic behavior we're seeing at the White House is extraordinary. And if that was all we were seeing, I think we would all have a right to be depressed, check out, go home, keep our heads low. But at the same time we see that, we see the most brilliant displays of humanity and neighborliness and patriotism from all around the country. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it, Joe.
You talk all the time about how courage is contagious, and I think that is absolutely the truth. And I think that that's part of why these keep getting bigger and bigger. But let's go back in time, because October was No Kings 2, and we thought things were extreme then, and so much has transpired since then, so much that has galvanized this country in opposition and resistance to what is happening. So let's just revisit that.
Look, I think what we're seeing is what people who are living under authoritarianism normally sees. We follow a lot of experts in authoritarianism: Erica Chenoweth, Maria Stephan. Hardy Merriman comes to mind. He had some advice that was ringing in my ears, which was, authoritarians, I'm paraphrasing because he's more of an academic, but authoritarians make you feel like shit on a daily basis. Like, that's what they do. They grind you down. And their goal isn't just to project power, it's to make you feel hopeless. And when they feel the walls closing in, they lash out. This happens everywhere. So when we see Trump menacing Venezuela and Greenland and Cuba and launching a war with Iran and trying to put the boot down on the Twin Cities, that doesn't come from a place of strength. That's what an authoritarian does when he feels like his power is being threatened, because it is. Trump is undeniably in a weaker position now than he was 14 months ago. And the No Kings 2 protest fed into that. A couple weeks after that protest, what did we see? The best election night that we've had in a decade plus, Joe, because there is a direct connection between the organizing work we're doing on the ground and then these electoral outcomes that we actually see that contest for power. So I think of No Kings this weekend as, yes, it's a big protest event. Yes, it's a good way to burst this bubble of inevitability from Trump. But the same people who are going to their first No Kings protest on Saturday, those are the people that are going to be knocking on doors to get out the vote and protecting the results of the election from Donald Trump's shenanigans that are inevitably going to come our way. That's how we're ultimately going to win. And so we just got to build it up to be as big, as powerful, as joyful as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think people want to do something. I mean, this is the thing. It can feel totally hopeless and disheartening, and people can feel disconnected from their own power. Events like this are so important to kind of galvanize people, get them together, make them feel inspired, part of something bigger, part of a community. That community part of this is so incredibly important. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a reason why we're not just doing protests in DC or just in New York. I like seeing those big protests. Hell, I'm going to be in the Twin Cities. Bruce Springsteen's going to kick it off, and we're going to have incredible artists that are out there, and the crowd's going to be enormous, and that's cool. But look, I'm from rural Texas. I'm from outside Butte city limits, Texas. There hasn't been local organizing infrastructure there. There wasn't when I was growing up. But if we're going to successfully push back against what Trump is doing, it's not going to be enough to just show up in the big city centers on one day. We actually have to replicate what we saw in the Twin Cities, which was neighborhood by neighborhood, people linking arms to push back against this regime. And it worked. This isn't just theory, Joe. As you know, it has a direct impact. So this is why we recommend to folks, look, if you're not within 30 minutes or an hour of your nearest No Kings protest, you should put on your own, not just because it's important to have more dots on the map, but because that's how you connect to your community, can build from that. It's all well and good to go to big city protests, but then how do you connect to your own community? That's the No Kings is a huge opportunity to do that. So I hope people do. Luckily, 95% of the U.S. population is within about an hour of their local No Kings protest. So their coverage is pretty good.
Yeah, that's insane. I told you last time for No Kings 2, I was shocked because a little town near where I grew up, which is a tiny little postage stamp of a town, had
Yeah.
their own protest and there were thousands of people there. And it was such a joyous event. It was so obviously peaceful. Like it wasn't a bunch of like, well, they will tell you what they will try to tell you is that it's a bunch of people who hate America and a bunch of
Yep.
people who
Yep.
are violent and they're trying to stoke fear. And none of that is true. It couldn't be further from the truth.
It's actually strategically not the truth. I was talking with an anti-authoritarian activist from Hungary, and he said something that really stuck with me. He said, "Ezra, these authoritarians, they don't understand mirth." And I love that. They don't understand mirth. They don't like joy. They hate the idea of communities coming together. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that is right. They love to be feared. They love to for people to think they're dangerous or they're powerful and scary. They love that. They hate people showing up with funny signs in unicorn costumes, dancing and singing and boisterously exercising their constitutional rights. That's a threat to them. And that's why nonviolence and community building is so core to all of this work. And I think that it is forefront to the strategy of taking down the authoritarian to enjoy this and make this a freaking party and have a good time. That should be what Saturday is like.
Yeah, and you talked about the fact that you're gonna be in Minneapolis and Bruce, my Jersey brother in arms, is also gonna be there. I know you touched on it, but it's so important, again, because what happened to Alex Preddy and Renee Good happened
Yeah.
between the last No Kings and this one. So can you talk about, again, what the people of Minnesota, what the people of the Twin Cities, what they modeled for all of us in the fight right now?
I mean, so and so when we were trying to figure out where was the flagship going to be, it wasn't a debate. It was very obvious to us because after Renee Good's murder and after Alex Preddy's murder, what we saw from the Twin Cities was this inspiring display of courage. You said it. Courage is contagious. That's the goal. Is we want courage to be contagious. And these were not professional politicos. These were not professional protesters or organizers. These were nurses and teachers and community leaders who decided to come together and link arms regardless of ideology, regardless of political orientation, regardless of who they voted for before, because they saw their community under threat. And in doing that, they were able to repel the full power of the United States federal government that was sending a secret police goon squad into their cities to terrorize communities and murder their residents. But normal people coming together showed us what's possible. I believe where we're headed is this guy is going to try to steal the election results. He's going to try to subvert the election in some way. I think that's where we're headed, and it's good for us to just all acknowledge that that's in the future. He is saying it out loud. We should expect it. So the question isn't is he going to try that? I think he's going to try that. The question is what do we do about it? And I
Mhm.
believe we're going to have to match the breadth of the organizing we're seeing with No Kings with the depth of the organizing that we've seen in places like the Twin Cities or Chicago or LA. That is what's going to be required when he tries to pull a fast one on us around the midterm elections. And I think it's doable. The folks in the Twin Cities showed us how.
Yeah, and you're 100% right that we should not suffer from a lack of imagination as far as what
Yes,
lengths he will go to and how desperate he will be to make sure that we do not have free and fair elections. And we don't it's not being pessimistic to say that it's being realistic to say that and it's being
that's right.
prepared. And we should be prepared for some responses potentially this weekend from him, because we've seen that historically in the past. So
That's
that's
right.
also a reality we probably should be prepared for.
When we talked before the No Kings 2, one thing that was very clear was Republicans couldn't shut up about us. It was Mike Johnson calling us fascists or
Yeah.
calling us terrorists, other Republican elected saying there was going to be chaos. Hell, they called out the National Guard in a few places. And I will say, Joe, they learned from that mistake, and it was a mistake because what that did was just shine a big old light on everything we're doing. And a lot of people are like, wow, that sounds cool. I want to be part of that protest. So you showed
Yeah.
up. I would challenge you to find one single national Republican who has said the words "no kinks" in the last month. They don't exist, Joe. And it's because they fear people finding out about this. They fear people showing up. They fear this being humongous and joyful and vibrant. And so that's why we've got to make this as big and powerful as possible. But we got to recruit for it because they're not doing our work for us. They're not shining a light. So I do hope people text "No Kings" to 59798. Find the nearest protest. I know everybody watching this, they're going to go to the protest. So here's the challenge. Find 2 or 3 people in your life who aren't like, they're not activist types, they're not organizers, they're not really political, but they don't like what's happening, and give them the gift of an invitation to hang with you this Saturday at an incredible, historical, joyful protest near where they live.
Yeah, I saw people at the last one that peers of mine, friends of mine that were not political, that have
I
not
love
ever
that.
marched in anything
Yeah.
ever. And they're just like, I have to do something. I have to be with other people who are feeling this, because there's also this gaslighting component, this isolating component of this
Yes.
moment, which was by design to make us
Yes.
feel like we're losing our minds. And that makes us feel like we want to disconnect and disengage.
Yeah.
And that's another byproduct of No Kings. And again, the follow through. This is an event, but it is not the sum total of this movement, of this opposition. There's a quote, it's on my wall. You have it
Yes.
too.
Oh,
Uh,
I've said it. Yeah.
yeah,
For,
can you?
first they, or is this the one? First they
Yes.
ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Yeah, that's the one.
I carry that with me everywhere I go. There's no greater compliment than being fought by these fascists, because that means we're one step from winning, y'all. And we're going to win because there are more of us than there are of them, and we're serious about organizing our collective power.
And we are not going to be the generation that loses this little experiment of ours. We are not going to be the generation that cedes this country to the fascists. And you
That's
are
right.
at the forefront of this fight. And I am so honored and so privileged and so lucky to get to talk to you. And I'm so excited to spread the word tonight in a joyful event, in an event that looks forward and it aspires to the best of us and speaks to our better angels.
Well, I'm thankful, Joe, you're on our side because I wouldn't want you on the other side. You're such an incredible organizer and communicator. You bring the truth to people and you empower them with that knowledge so they can actually take action. I will say, this is far from an indivisible thing. This is far from an Ezra 11 thing, and this is and you show that by the event that you've put together today, because this is clearly a massive group project, and it's folks doing outreach, it's folks doing event registration, it's folks on the ground putting together rosters. This is a massive group project, and that's what makes it real and organic and powerful. It doesn't belong to any individual or any organization. There are thousands and thousands of national and state level and local leaders who are making this real. It's just what an honor and a privilege to be part of something so important and historic and joyful. I can't wait.
I can't either. And I say this all the time, and it couldn't be more true than it is right now. But the only way out is through, and the only way through is together. And that is exactly what this is. And that is
Right.
exactly what this will be. And that is exactly where we will be sooner rather than later. So thank you very much, Ezra, for joining me. I'm so excited to get ahead with this event. So we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. See
Bye.
you Saturday. Ezra always fills my cup, and that quote is by Gandhi, and if you don't know it, it is a quote of this moment, and I'm so glad and so grateful to get to talk to him. We have a lineup tonight of incredible activists and incredible content creators that are going to be shining a light on why this is so important and why this is the antidote to everything that these authoritarians are trying to do to this country. Just a reminder, if you guys don't mind, put where you're going to be marching and why in the chat. I'd love to see where you're from or where you're going to be. And with that, let's bring in our second guest. We have Human Rights Campaign President Kelly Robinson, one of the headliners at the LA No Kings event. Hi.
Hey, I am so excited to be here and to follow Ezra. Wow, what a great spot.
Oh my gosh, welcome. So Human Rights Campaign is the nation's largest civil rights organization working to achieve LGBTQ plus equality with over 3.6 million members. So let's start there. Let's start with Donald Trump and this regime's attack on the LGBTQ community and on trans people in particular, because it has been egregious and it has been grotesque. So let's start there.
And it's been heartbreaking. Look, trans people are Americans, right? LGBTQ plus people have been integral in the fabric of building this country, and to see the brazen attacks in our community for no other reason than political gain is heartbreaking. Look, on day one of this administration, they reimposed the ban on trans people serving in the military. They implemented executive orders that they called anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion orders that limited our ability to be who we are and thrive in the workplace. They have done everything that they can to come after our community, to come after our healthcare, especially gender affirming care. And I think that's why you actually see our community more motivated than ever. Anyone that thought that the fight for equality was over, we got a clear lesson that it is not. And for us to protect the rights that we have and continue to move down that path towards equality, folks got to show up.
Yeah, this is life and death also. I mean, Donald Trump shut down the specialized service, a lot of specialized services for people in the LGBTQ plus community, including a suicide hotline known as Option 3 for young people. Like, again, this is a matter of life and death that they're playing games with.
It really is. The other day I was talking to the parent of a trans kid, and she said, I pray for the day when I can worry more about my kid finishing their vegetables at dinner than whether or not they're going to survive to the next day. This is parents that are just trying to make sure that their kids survive. This is kids that just want to play. This is people that just want to be who they are. Anyone that sees what's happening, you got to understand that anything that they're doing to the trans community today, it could be happening to you tomorrow. Look at Kansas, where they've tried to take away the driver's licenses of people just because they are trans. If you can do that to a group of citizens in a single day, it could happen to any of us. So if you're pissed off, if you see what's happening to the trans community, this is a call to action, because they are beta testing on this community what they plan to do to so many of us.
Oh, that's so true. And as we've seen in places like Kansas, I believe it's Kansas, they've even taken their driver's licenses away, and they've threatened them with arrest, and it made it more difficult for them to vote. And it is marginalizing them, but it's a proving grounds, like you said, for what they will do. And people might think this doesn't impact them directly right now, but it's not a matter of if, it's when it does. And you're right, it starts here. So we have to put the line down now, build the barriers up now.
We absolutely have to. I mean, all of our lives are at risk. Before I came to the Human Rights Campaign, I was the executive director of Planned Parenthood Action Fund. I remember what it was like on that day when the decision came down, the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. It was when it started this pattern of seeing the Supreme Court and state legislatures roll back civil rights that we have gained over the last 40, 50, and 60 years. It's not just happening to some of our communities, it's happening to all of them. And I believe, honestly, the reason that it's happening is they are fighting a future that's already arrived. Look, the United States of America is more Black and brown than it's ever been before. It's queer, more queer than it's ever been before. Women are in positions of power and authority, and all those things that make me excited, I think, are actually threatening and terrifying to a group of folks, right? Because they want minority control of this country. This is a deciding point in the story of our nation. Are we truly going to be a country that's by and for the people, all of the people? And that's why these protests matter, because it's showing that the will of the people is not with some small group of elitist billionaires. No, the will of the people is what's showing up every day in our neighborhoods to fight for our communities. And it's not going to stop until all of us have the representation we deserve.
Oh, that's amazing. And yes, and thank you. And you're one of the headliners in Los Angeles, and every city, every little town, every state has its own sort of heartbeat and style and tone. And what is it like to be at one of these events in Los Angeles? What's the mood like there?
I mean, this is the land of dreamers and storytellers. The stories I have heard, not only the stories of harm, but the stories of power. Yesterday, I was at the Stories AIDS Memorial that just opened in West Hollywood, and it had all kinds of displays of what our community's fight was like to address the AIDS crisis and all of the things that folks have done. And for me, it really held the spirit of grief and power in the same breath. In fact, there was this quote there that said, "Do not be consumed by hate, but please continue to be consumed by rage, because it's that rage that's going to power us to get to change." And I think here in Los Angeles, people get that. They get it deeply into their core. And they also get that we can't let go of the dreams, right? Of continuing to imagine what the world could be. Because for me, I think when I think about this moment, the fatal flaw that we could make is thinking that there's a way to restore the old world, right? Where things were sort of working, but they really weren't serving so many of us anyway, right? And in this moment where there's a crisis and there's certainly a reckoning at play, there's an opportunity for us to reimagine the future of this democracy, right? In a powerful and beautiful way, one that is more inclusive and whole than our framers could have ever imagined. And here in Los Angeles, they embody that spirit of the dreamer, which makes it such a unique space to spend No Kings 3.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about this as an opportunity. And it's a really messed up way to say it and think about it in a certain way, right? Because nobody actually wants to go through all of this. But I think for so long we were sailing along feeling comfortable
That's right.
but comfortable in sort of in mythology, right? Because so many people were not experiencing the reality that so many others were. And it wasn't justice for all. And it wasn't, representative of all the people. And Kamala Harris talked about this, when it's darkest is when you see the stars shining the brightest. And there's this Japanese art form called kintsugi, and I could talk about that all day long, but it essentially is when there's broken pieces of ceramics or pottery and you take them and you put them back together with some kind of metal that binds them and makes this more beautiful, more stronger piece of art. That kind of feels like this moment, and that's a way to look at it that is optimistic and, again, forward looking. And that's what's so inspiring about No Kings, is that it gives everyone a sense of hopefulness and optimism and what we can do together, because we've been pulled apart, and that is obviously so by design, and that this is this moment where we can all come together and connect as human beings. And it is optimistic and hopeful.
Yes, you are preaching on tonight. All of that so resonates with me, right? While some people are waking up to the threat of authoritarianism right now, many of us have been living under its foot for the last 400 years. And this is a moment where the crisis is so visible to so many of us that maybe, just maybe, we can introduce the kinds of solutions that can actually launch us forward. Like, look, I've been in politics for a long time, and there were always parts of our institutions of democracy that we were taught never to question, right? Parts that were built when Black people were enslaved, when women couldn't vote, when LGBTQ plus people didn't legally exist at all. But now we can talk about it. Now we can say maybe we do need term limits on the United States Supreme Court. We can talk about the flaws of the Electoral College and actually making sure that every person's vote counts. We can talk about money in politics and how that is screwing all of us over. But that's the opportunity right now, and we can't lose that in this crisis. And I think the beauty of No Kings is that people of all walks of life, people that have never protested before, people that have been in this game for the last 50 years are coming together in mass to envision what the future could be and should be.
Yeah. And while we weren't where we should have been and had much more work to do, what they are seeking to do is to erase even those gains, even any gains we made, it literally and figuratively erasing whole existences and history itself. They're trying to erase slavery from our history books, from our history exhibits, from our museums. They're trying to erase LGBTQ plus people. They're trying to erase people of color from our history itself. This is sort of this clash of this moment where it feels like whoever prevails is obviously the direction we're going to go in. And are we going to go all the way backwards, or are we going to keep pushing forward to striving towards making whatever gains we can, picking up, like you said, the broken pieces and moving forward? But they would very much like to erase all of it.
They would. And, I always have to remind myself and others too, that the challenges that we're experiencing right now, they didn't start with Donald Trump, and they won't end with Donald Trump. This isn't a moment where one march or one rally or one election is going to solve everything. We have to be in this for the long haul. And anything that we're seeing play out right now, we saw them practicing these strategies in Texas and in Florida. We saw it laid out for us in plain language in Project 2025. So this march is such an awesome opportunity to galvanize all of the energy. And one of the things I think is really powerful is that you've got at least 2 No Kings marches happening in every congressional district, because this isn't just about what happens in Washington, D.C. This is about changing the nature of power on your school boards, on your PTA, on your city council, because that's where we can make that urgent change in people's lives. And I hope that people show up this Saturday, they fill their cup, they get a little energy, and they keep the fight going.
Yeah, that's the part, right? Like, so that's what people are going to be looking to do. We've seen this after every march. We've seen the people out there have an appetite to get involved. They often don't know where or how or what's it's not one size fits all. What they can do, what they have, an appetite to do. And let's talk about that, before we leave with you tonight. Like, what does it look like the day after a No Kings March for people who want to do something? What can they do? Where can they go?
Well, I want to tell them concretely, Trans Day of Visibility is the day after the No Kings March. So anyone that showed up for No Kings and you're passionate about showing solidarity with trans lives, it's a beautiful way to show up. And that day is not about all the stories of hate and harm. It's about lifting up the power of the trans community and our allies. So I encourage folks to look up Trans Day of Visibility events, share your story, and show up. And look, at the end of the day, if we're going to change the nature of power, we got to win this election. And that doesn't just happen on a Tuesday in November. That happens by knocking on doors, supporting candidates that you believe in, making sure yourself and everyone that you know is registered to vote. Those are all things that people can do probably during the march, but immediately after the march as well. But the most important thing is that we show up. And we show up for each other in bold ways. And that looks like going to protest, but also looks like not being silent in the face of misinformation, disinformation, and lies. And that's something that all of us can do every single day with the Human Rights Campaign, with Indivisible, with No Kings, and just even on your own. All that matters is that each of us does a little bit of something to add up to the collective power that we need to win.
Exactly. If all of us does something, then none of us has to do it all. So
That's
that
right.
is absolutely the truth. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to meet you, wonderful to talk to you, and have a wonderful march on Saturday. And then we will see you another time. I hope to talk again.
That's
actually.
right. All right.
Yeah.
Hang in there. Thanks for having me.
You too. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Wow. The energy in LA, I'm sure, is incredible. And I love all of the aerial shots that we get to see of the crowds. Is first of all, it's inspiring, and secondly, that it pisses off the audience of one. Moving on to our next guests, we have Kristen Crow, host of No Kings Downtown Atlanta, and my friend Majid Padelan, Brooklyn Dad Defiant, co-host of the Joe and BDD show. Hi, Brooklyn.
Hola.
Siren Network. How are you?
Man, you said energy in LA, and like the energy that was coming off of her, I mean, it made me want to run through a wall,
Yeah.
Incredible.
Oh my God, same. That's exactly what it is. Like, honestly, it's like there's this constant tug of war between, feeling like we got this, we can do this. I'm on, it's just so much. This is overwhelming. This is disheartening. This is depressing. And her energy was like, it was so cup filling. It was like, that is exactly, just shoot that straight into my arm. That's exactly what I need.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you and I are going to chat for a minute, because I'm not sure if our next guest is here. I'm just checking with Sam. But
you mentioned those aerial shots, right? I want to say this year and these past few years have been quite a change in, like a change in how information is being dispersed.
Yeah.
Right. It's not so much the traditional media anymore. Like we're still there, but they're kind of getting drowned out, and the social media is key. So folks, it's not just the aerial shots, right? It's when you're in the crowd, if you happen to hold your phone up and pan the crowd, and so that like everybody can get that visceral feel, like that stuff gets disseminated and spread throughout people's Facebook pages and their inboxes and email and stuff like that. So please, everybody, if you have enough data to share like 30 seconds of your march, please do so. And those of us who have the ability to broadcast it to help magnify your video, your little 30-second clip, we will get it out there. We will make sure that as many people as possible get to see it.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things are the signs. Hi. Hi, Kristen. Sorry. Welcome,
Hi.
Kristen Crow, co-host, host of the No Kings Downtown Atlanta event. We were just talking about some of the things that people can do in sharing content from the actual marches themselves. Before I exit stage left, I just wanted to say the signs are my favorite thing. When I see all the signs from all over, that's my favorite thing. Like people sharing their favorite signs, because some of them are just like, darn, that's so fucking funny.
People are very clever. Yeah.
Very clever. And with that, I'll let the two of you take over. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
So, welcome, and maybe you should be welcoming me. Can you tell me a little bit about what you are doing for the march and what you have done?
Yes. So I'll start recent and then we'll go backwards. So our event on Saturday for No Kings 3 is a brief rally. And then we are going to make about a 3/4 mile march loop around the state capitol. So we are going to surround the state capitol of Georgia in Atlanta with hopefully somewhere towards 30,000 plus people. So we can make our voices heard, make our presence known, letting everyone know that the power is with the people, and we are going to demonstrate that as loudly as we can. So again, this is our 4th event. So last year we did Hands Off, No Kings 1 and No Kings 2. Those events have gotten progressively larger, from about 15,000 to 20,000 to 25,000-ish, 30. It's hard to count when you get that many people. We've gone between rallies and marches, just trying to give people a variety of different options to get involved, to be joyful. We make sure that we include people from the community, culture bearers, musicians, entertainment, things like that. We want joy and resistance, not just, death by PowerPoint, so to speak, out in a park. So we try to mix it up a little, give everyone an opportunity to kind of find their space and find their joy and find their action for activism.
What do people need to do if they want to get involved, if they want to join the march, or if they want to, participate, like if they want to help, Kristen, I want to make signs, or I want to hand out, flyers. Who do they contact? How do they do that?
Yeah. So takes a lot to put on an event like this. It takes the people to show up to kind of create the visual, but it also takes multiple hundreds of volunteers to make it work. So if you want to attend, you want to have a sign, you want to, come with your hiking club or your book club or your mom's group, go to nokings.org. We're the main Atlanta event. So if you search Atlanta, we're called No Kings Atlanta, right in downtown on the Memorial Drive Greenway. So you can sign up via Mobilize there to come to attend. Definitely make your own clever sign. We will also have a lot of placards available. So if you're thinking, I'm not that creative, or I don't have markers in my house, what am I going to do? We will have signs. You can hold them up. We have lots of different ones that you can take with you and you can be proud of. And if you're planning to come, bring a friend. Find someone who isn't planning to come, who hadn't thought about it before, and invite them along with you. Again, it's a joyful event. The weather here is going to be polleny, but beautiful, not too hot, perfect spring weather here. Things are starting to bloom. So get your friends, come on down. If you want to volunteer, the best thing to do is to visit the ACLU of Georgia's website. They have a No Kings landing page with a volunteer sign up form there. That form is probably going to close soon. So if you're like, oh man, I didn't sign up, that's okay. You can show up at any point between 7:30 a.m. and 9 a.m., come to the blue volunteer tent and say, I'm ready to work. And we will put you to work. There are so many things to do. Handing out water, we call them care bears, the folks who take care of the attendees. So
Yeah.
make sure they're hydrated, make sure they know where the bathrooms are, things like that. We'll have a ton of people handing out flyers so that folks know what comes next. No Kings is the first step, right?
I can't begin to tell you how important it is what people like you are doing right now. I mean, it fills my heart and my soul with hope, with joy. And you mentioned joyful, right? And I'm going to get back to the joyful in a minute. But you give me so much encouragement, because right now a lot of America has hunkered down, and there's a lot of anger and fear, from the things that we've been bombarded with over the past 6, 8, 12 months, ICE grabbing people and just horrible things. And so the fact that you're like, you know what, yeah, up yours, and here's some joy up your ass. But here's my question, right? As much as the joy is important, have you trained, or have your members trained to anticipate people who might try to derail the joy? What I mean is like counter protesters. I mean, people who would try to infiltrate your numbers and cause a ruckus, because that's the worst thing that could happen, right? So
Absolutely.
Is there a contingency plan for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've been around with Ezra and Leah talking about how they put together the idea behind No Kings, its first tenet is nonviolent, peaceful protest. So every host, and there is a subset of volunteers, peace marshals, safety marshals, they have a lot of different names, but they go through very extensive safety training that is required by the No Kings organization in order to have your event approved. So our event, like every other event, has a very specific safety plan. So our peace marshals know exactly what to do and when to do it. They are gridded out. So we have a grid for our marshals. They work in pairs. They work the grid. They keep people where they're supposed to be during the march. They keep people from fighting with one another, with whoever may show up. We welcome counter protesters. They have an opinion too. They are also entitled to their free speech. We won't tolerate violence in any way, shape, or form. So we will follow that safety plan with de-escalation. We did have a situation where the Proud Boys showed up for No Kings 1, and we have a lovely band called the Ace Band that just played around them. So, there are lots of ways to de-escalate, of course. But we always ask attendees to look for the folks in the appropriately colored vest to handle any situations like that, so that they don't get to a point of no return, right? So everyone is there to practice what they feel is their First Amendment right. And as long as they're doing that peacefully and not, harming anyone around them, then we're happy to have them.
What activated you? Because you seem very, very young. What got you involved in this, in this activity? And this, because this is a very specific thing. Like, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to make sure that people can protest peacefully and safely. How did you get involved in this?
Yeah, this component of what I do, this mass action mobilization component, is actually not what I signed up for. It is not, wasn't the goal. The actions I got involved in were local grassroots organizing. So I have my own indivisible group that I started with a couple of other folks about 1.5 years ago, and we are mobilizing in our community. So we do a lot of community work. We do a lot of fundraising, food bank fundraising. We do a lot of mutual aid. We also do a lot of direct voter contact, so people understand the voter laws here in Georgia, which are under attack right now as we speak. I think they're taking a vote right now, to be honest. So we do a lot of that, asking people to call their state senators and tell them how they feel about different bills in the state legislature. So I got involved at the grassroots local level, and kind of building power that way, and getting people involved in the very minutia of their everyday life, city council, mayor, state legislature, things like that, which means we had an active mobilized group ready to show up when we called. So I think that's where my passion is. It's where bringing people together, having them find their like issues and their like policies, and understanding how they are more alike than they are different, and how they can actually impact things around them that they may not have thought were possible. And because I started doing that and just wanted to be amongst the people, right, to feel the joy, even though the doom scrolling happens regularly. And the mass action was just sort of like, hey, can you also do this? It's like, I mean, I guess
Right.
we'll figure it out. So now we bring our local folks out into the streets as often as they tell us.
What's the energy level like down there in Atlanta right now? Like, is there a lot of anticipation? Are people like just chomping at the bit, ready to go? What do you get the feel for?
They are. When the date was released about 60 days in advance, is about when it went live nationally. Everyone was calling and emailing and saying, it's on our calendar. What are we doing? What can we do? Where do we go? What kind of event are we going to have? How can I get involved? What help do you need? So people have been, I mean, it seems like October wasn't that long ago, but I think what's happened between October and now is sort of exponential when you think about just what happened since January.
When you say October, are we referring to Minneapolis?
No, so No Kings 2
Oh,
was in
okay.
October. Yeah. And
Right.
so, people, they had holidays and things happened in between. And then they woke up in January and were like, this will be a better year. And then it was not a better year. And, so many things have been crammed in with, ICE nabbing people off the streets in their masks and shooting American citizens in cold blood and starting a war with a country that we have no business starting a war with. And just one thing after another, it just keeps coming and going. And, people just really want to stay active, and they want to, keep the pressure up. So they're always looking for what's the next thing, what's the next action, what's the next activity, where can I go, what can I do?
I'm curious, is it just Democrats and liberals and progressives? Are there any Republicans in the mix, and independents, people who like identify as like, you know what? I don't agree with you guys and your abortion stuff and all this, but I can't go abide by this other stuff.
Yes, it is everyone. The tent is huge. Georgia is also a purple state, right? Like Atlanta is very blue, but we bring people in from the exurbs and the suburbs and things like that, where it is much more purple, and even out into some of the more rural areas where it's much more red. We have converts too, folks who voted for Trump and realized that this is not serving them, and they want to know how they can affect change. And my response is always, welcome to the resistance. Let's talk. Everyone is welcome. We're all going to differ on policy. We can have policy debates all day long. I would love to have a policy debate with anyone, anytime. But if you're on the side of democracy and you're on the side of protecting our rights and our values and our country, then you are welcome at any point, at any time. We will welcome you with open arms.
I want to look down the road a little bit towards the midterms. I'm sure as active as you are planning for this weekend, are there any other major events planned for the rest of the year leading up to just right before the midterms?
Yeah, so our primary is actually in May. May 19th is the Georgia primary. We have 2 state Supreme Court seats that we'll be voting on that are not primary elections. It's a general election. So we'll be driving toward that primary right away. So the next action we want folks who are coming out to take is to join up with us to start talking about direct voter contact and how they can start reaching out to folks in their neighborhoods and in their communities, at their churches, in their schools, to talk about what elections are coming up, who is up for election, what that means for them, and how that will impact their, abilities and to keep doing what they want to do. And so our focus will be a lot on that. Georgia in particular is a battleground state for a lot of the different organizations in the progressive space and in the democracy space. So we've got a lot of pressure on us. We want Jon Ossoff to keep his Senate seat. Our state executive offices are also turning over this year. So the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, all of those, we definitely want to make some changes there. We have a Republican trifecta that we would like to break up as
Yeah.
much as possible. So that's kind of where we will be here locally in the state of Georgia, is kind of focusing first on the primary and then driving pretty hard toward the elections. And that will be around turning out the vote and also protecting people's vote. The talk of ICE being at national polling places or taking over the elections or voter fraud or all sorts of things. And like I mentioned, the state legislature is actively pursuing some voter suppression bills right now, today, as we speak, that could really upend our midterm elections. So we're also going to be mobilizing folks to protect the people who are going to vote and help them understand what their rights are when they are voting, so that they can feel comfortable heading to a polling place, casting their ballot, and knowing that it is the right thing to do. It is valid, it is legal, and no one's doing anything wrong, and no one's going to take away their vote.
You guys, you have it you have it down pat. I'm very proud of you guys. What you're doing. Now, one last question before we go, because I know I got the signal here, but Georgia today, as you mentioned, is purple, but that purple Georgia, that's not my Georgia or my daddy's or granddaddy's Georgia. What made Georgia turn purple all of a sudden?
Yeah. So about 6 months ago, we were speaking with Heather Cox Richardson as part of our Indivisible statewide coalition. And she actually said something that really resonated with me. She said, Georgia's not a red state or even a purple state. It is a voter suppressed state.
Ooh. Oh, she's so good.
And the more you think about that, the more you realize she's absolutely right. If people could vote easily and they didn't run into so many barriers, and there was, easier ways to cast your ballot, to drop off your ballot, multiple ways to vote, more information about what you're voting for and what it means and what candidates are, that we would be a blue state. And fortunately for us, Stacey Abrams has done a lot to get us over the hump and help kind of deter some of those voter suppression and cleansing of the rolls, purging of the rolls that they're doing at the state level. So I feel pretty confident that if we can kind of open it up for folks and we can stop some of the bad voting bills, that Georgia will become a blue state.
Kristen, you are absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm so happy I got a chance to interview you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And best of luck to you guys on Saturday. I know we're going to knock it out of the park. Any idea what number you guys are looking at breaking?
We are hoping for above 30K. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's so many events this time around, which is wonderful. I'm so glad to see different communities hosting their own event. So I think in Georgia, we'll see huge numbers. They may not all be concentrated in Atlanta, but our state will definitely show up.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you both so much. The activation story is so fascinating to me because it's different for so many of us. 2016 was definitely mine. And as a parent, that's another one that constantly motivates me to want to fight in this fight. I just want to remind everybody that there's a QR code in the corner. If you don't know where your closest march is going to be, if you're like, I live in the sticks, I don't know where to go, click on that or text 59798. Text No Kings to 59798, and you'll find the closest No Kings event to you. Also wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that the video we played at the top was created and produced by the Seneca Project with my friend Tara Setmeyer. And she's also going to be joining us. So if you're joining from the Seneca Project stream, welcome. We played, sorry, I'm just laughing at the comments. We played their video to open the show. We're going to be playing their videos throughout the show. And so without further ado, let's play their video. This one is from Seneca Project and it is called FOMO.
We're all here to say no more. Enough is enough.
Millions millions of people with you.
That one was amazing. They're all amazing. They make the best content out there. And you are not alone. Millions of people are with you. And yes, Brooklyn, that video was fire. Their videos are fire. And please go and support them because they can't do this without you. And with that, we'll bring in our next pair of guests. We have Sarah Harris, a mother of three organizer with Free the Future West Virginia, and organizer of the Kids Not Kings Playdate at the protest event on March 28th from 12 to 2:30 at the state capitol in Charleston, West Virginia. And my friend Joe Galina, who is the owner of the account called Activism, co-owner of the account. Hi, Joe. Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. We were talking a little bit and touching on our whys, etc. Sarah, I love that you put mother of three in your bio. I wanted to talk about what this moment is like for you as a mom. My kids are my why. Fighting this bully. When they were little, they were 7 and 4 when he was elected the first time. And Joe is a dad as well. He's a beautiful little girl. So let's start with you, Sarah. And then Joe, if we can also kind of talk about what this moment means as parents.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very civic engaged family. Was helping my dad campaign when I was young, and so that, first of all, that was instilled in me. I was allowed to be brought into the work, and there was space made for me. So I feel very fortunate that that's how I was raised, and we're doing that with our kids too. Each of us here on this call, they're our why, they are our future. And so I believe that families shouldn't have to choose between showing up for their values and showing up for their kids. So when I started taking my kids to the No Kings protest, I noticed that it was a great turnout. It was a great feeling, but my kids were uncomfortable, frankly. They weren't sure where they belonged in this big space with all these people. And so last August, when we had a No Kings event, I think it was August, together with the ACLU, we decided to host a play date, see what happened, right? So we brought out bubbles and soccer balls and, little protest signs that they could make that said like pups for the people. And it was just this really engaging, wonderful, beautiful experience. And I continued to find my why. My kids are kids that are in public schools, and Free the Future West Virginia is working really hard to bring organizers and support to the fight for public education. So in that lens, now's the time. Our state legislature just wrapped up, gave millions of dollars to what we call the Hope Scholarship, which is a voucher program, and funded special education that needed $224 million to function well, gave them $8 million. So in a state that's already hurting with our educational infrastructure, we're going to see deeper cuts, and it's going to affect our most vulnerable. So that's my why in a nutshell.
That's incredible. What about you, Joe?
Well, I'm reminded by one of my favorite memories. I should say it was a horrifying day, but my daughter right now is about 4 years old. And when she was about 5 months old was when the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade. And we were just very determined that day. And we went to the Supreme Court to join the protest there. And we brought my daughter. And it was one of the very first memories I have of bringing my daughter to a protest. She was just a little squirt, but it was just amazing because unprompted at 5 months old, she lifted her fist. And I have this most amazing photograph of a 5-year-old putting her fist up outside the Supreme Court. So she must just have it in her DNA, I think.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this openly. My daughter is now 12, and the first No Kings, she didn't want me to go. She cried. She was afraid. She was afraid because this is what's been modeled for them, right? That we should be afraid to protest, that we should be afraid that we'd be hurt in some way. And I didn't go to the first one because she was crying. And then I went to the second, and I showed her all the videos, and I showed her all the other kids that were there, and we're raising little citizens right now. But this idea of showing them not to be afraid, that it's un-American to be afraid that using your voice in peaceful protest should get, you should be worried about that getting you killed. I mean, I think that what you're doing, Sarah, is so incredibly important. And obviously, Joe, raising a little citizen, but I think it starts with our kids, it starts with them understanding that their voice is their power and that it should be protected. And I love how you're having it set up as a play date. I've never heard of that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, we're real excited. And the beautiful thing about it is it's not just me organizing it. People are donating their items. Like I got a donated cotton candy machine and a donated play yard for kids. And, we're crafting together. People that have skills and talents and interests are bringing that to the event. And we're hosting this together as a community for the kids.
Yeah, and Joe, you're in the. I'm not going to give it away, but are you comfortable saying where you will be participating?
Yeah, we're in the DC area. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. We're close to the DC area.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, to me, the beauty of No Kings is that the MAGA movement itself is not only a horrific movement in and of itself, but it's also a suppression movement. I think that part of their MO is to just beat us down so much with the bad news and the news constantly that we end up getting so tired and exhausted that we're not prepared for the next thing that comes down the hill. And it's like they just hit us with this barrage over and over again. And I think No Kings is just what an amazing, emblematic ability for us to carry out our rights and to actually show up and be like, no, you know what? We're not going to deal with the BS. We're all standing up as one unified voice, and this is what we can do, and this is what we will do. So to me, at least, it's a very empowering feeling.
Yeah, and so much of what they've done has impacted their own voters as well. So much of what they've done hasn't been partisan in any way. And one of the things that they've done is that they've really tried to dismantle special education. And Sarah, I see here that it says that your children receive individualized education program services. I was a paraprofessional for almost 7 years, and I can speak to how critically important these services are. And the Trump administration has decimated them. And I think, again, they somehow must think, or maybe they don't care. Actually, they don't care that they don't think this impacts their own voters. Not that it should matter, but this is not an issue that is partisan in any way. These learning disabilities, they don't choose, who they're going to impact based on how their parents vote. So can you talk about that in terms of what they have done, the attacks on special education?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing is to frame special education, right? It is disability, but it's also our gifted kids. It's our pregnant and parenting kids. It's our kids facing trauma and mental health crises. And, I'm in West Virginia, and we're obviously a very red state right now, which has not historically always been the case, but it's shifted with the MAGA movement. And right now they are feeling the crunch of that. But, in terms of special education, IDEA was set up in the 70s, and that's the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. And the federal government at the time promised to pay 40% of a state's educational budget for special education. And that has never, ever happened in the history of IDEA. We're actually getting 12 to 15% of a budget that was promised at 40%. And then you have your state legislatures continuing to cut. You have your federal government eliminating the Office of Civil Rights. There's nobody to report to if your child's civic rights are being infringed upon. So it's very devastating. But we looked it up today, and over the course of since 1970 to current, with the funding formula being what it actually is, West Virginia has missed out on $167 million a year in federal support for special education. So that's billions of dollars. And then we wonder why our schools are crumbling. Then they point to the schools as the failure, when really it's the system that has allowed it and perpetuated its downfall. It's very interesting to me how this is all playing out. But I think it starts with education. We need to educate ourselves on what authoritarianism looks like and how it reaches into our schools.
I think that's so important and so true. I mean, that information is our greatest tool, and it's why it is their one of the greatest threats to them, which is why I believe they would like us to very much be dumb, uneducated, with a lack of the resources to question what they're doing, and to keep us poor and saddled with debt, etc. Again, so that they can seize more power. They're doing this to all of us. They're really where it's impacting all of us, and I think that's why, in large measure, we've seen the numbers that we've seen on the special elections that we've had, even in Donald Trump's own district, which is just chef's kiss. Everywhere from New Jersey to Virginia to Georgia to Oklahoma to Texas. It's people they're waking up, so to speak. But I think now that everyone is feeling this, unfortunately, it required everybody feeling it. They're starting to say, "Oh yeah, no, they don't have our best interests in mind." Joe, what are your thoughts on all of that? And
Yeah.
why will you be marching? What are your biggest whys?
Oh, well, my biggest whys, first and foremost, is that democracy means so much to me. Growing up in a free country means so much to me. But more importantly, just leaving a better country than the way I found it to my daughter is why I get up every day. And unfortunately, right now, we can't say that. It feels like every day of the Trump administration, we're playing a game of limbo. And it's, how low can we go? And it's getting worse and worse. But to me, I do see some hope. And I think what you were saying, Joe, about the elections does fill me with some hope. I think that Donald Trump's claim to fame and the MAGA movement is a very much outsider movement. He's on the outside, and he's going to go after deep state. And what ends up happening is he gets into office, and that all goes away because he becomes the office. And I think that some of that shtick goes away, and you start seeing even his own ardent supporters start questioning big decisions that he's making that that go against his promises. So I think Epstein was a huge blow. I think a lot of people kind of woke up to the fact that, wait a minute, you are the swamp. But not enough and not fast enough. But I am encouraged by obviously these numbers. I just hope they continue. And for the remaining 25% of America, you just kind of want to say, what the hell are you thinking? Come to reality, because we need to move forward as a country someday past Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And right now they're still holding on to the dream, even though he's done everything possible to hurt them.
Right. And I think often about my son, who's almost 17, and this idea that they're not saying explicitly that they won't institute a draft. I mean, we have this automatic registration now for young men of a certain age that they kind of just slid in there. But I see a little person right there, Sarah. But yeah, and hi. Sorry. Oh, hi. Oh my gosh. You're so cute. Oh my gosh. Wait, how old? 4?
4, yeah.
4, yeah.
This is Evelyn.
Hi, Evelyn. You have to be our warrior of the future, okay? And it's no pressure. I just tell my kids, I'm like, your generation has to fix what my son is almost 17, my daughter's 12. I'm like, you guys have some responsibility here. You have to pick up where we tried to guide you, but we didn't exactly meet all of the moment in totality. But it's great to see your daughter, and again, that this is what we're fighting for. We want to leave this world a better place than the one that we found it. And when I think about the fact that my daughter has fewer rights than I had at her age, that all of our daughters do, that shakes me to my core. And again, it's not political. This is not a political issue. This is an attack on all of us. And that's why these marches, especially when you have the kids involved in such a wonderful and engaging and safe and encouraging way, they really do give me so much hope. And it's such an inspiration. That's just great to see her. She's adorable, by the way. So Joe, you're going to be in DC. I'm curious, Sarah, as we're waiting for more, we got more guys. West Virginia is, like you said, it has flipped. It wasn't always red, but is where you are, is there sort of a mixture? Because where I am in New Jersey, believe it or not, is red.
I think, so I don't think this is widely known, but this state went for Bernie Sanders in every county.
That's right. I saw that documentary.
And then we certified for Hillary Clinton. And I think that was a turning point for a lot of people, because they went for Bernie because he was the outsider in that election, And then we were, our population went with the other outsider in lieu of going for, what they saw as an establishment politician. And so I think that's where we start. And then we kind of look forward, get out of here. Get out. Go into where we are currently. And I kind of feel like we're on an interstate. And I always kind of refer to it as giving people off ramps. You know, people joined the MAGA movement because they felt underrepresented, underserved, and like politics as usual wasn't working for them here in West Virginia. And, you know, but they got grifted. And I think, like you said, you know, there's 75% of the country that's kind of woken up to this reality, but there's the 25% that's remaining. And I think we'll see in West Virginia with our election cycle coming up, you know, where are we going to land? We've cut medical care, we've cut schools, we've cut infrastructure bills. Where do we land at the end of this? It'll be really interesting.
Yeah, no, hopefully. I mean, sadly, again, it's the kind of thing where you don't want anyone to have to go through any of this. But if it requires, you know, like with our kids, sometimes you have the one kid who just needs to stick their hand in the fire for them to understand that it's hot. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that might be this moment. But hopefully, we've managed to intervene before it's too late. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Joe. It's great to see you both. Great to meet you, Sarah. And stay safe on Saturday. And thank you so much, both of you, for being in this fight. Joe, you know I love you, my friend.
Well, can I say one last thing?
Of course.
If anybody is interested in learning how to organize around special education, you can go to freethefuture.net and sign up at the bottom, and they host weekly trainings on how to organize in your community around special education and education in general.
Oh, that's amazing. Hopefully, Sam, if you can put that in the chat, people can see that in the chat and then go there as well. Yeah, that's so important. That is critically important. Very important work. Thank you so much again, Sarah. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. We talked a lot about education and our kids during that conversation, and we're going to bring in right now my friend Sarah Beth Rosenberg, who is a New York City-based history teacher and host of the Polytoxic podcast here on the Siren Network. We are waiting for the American Federation of Teachers president Randy Weingarten to join you, Sarah. But in the meantime, she's here.
Yes,
she's here. But in the meantime, it's good to see you.
Yes, it's great. To
hi,
see you.
Hi, Randy. Welcome.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. It's so good to see Randy. I haven't seen you in a while.
I know.
Well, with
how come, Sarah? How come you always look younger? Like,
she
how
does.
Is that possible?
She does.
Isn't that true, Joe?
It's the light.
Age is backward.
It's literally. Thank you. It's being around high school kids all day.
I was going to say, high school teaching really wears well on you.
Yes, it does. It's weird because having a high schooler, it has the opposite effect.
I can leave them and send them home to you and get my beauty sleep.
Yeah. Well, you are absolutely beautiful. Both of you are. And I'll let you guys take away the conversation.
Thanks, Joe. So
thanks,
Randy,
Joe.
It's so good to see you. And we were talking offline about how I wish I could be in Minneapolis with you all on Saturday. So I'll be here in New York City. I'll be holding down the fort here. But I wanted to first start off by asking you, I think it's probably pretty clear to everyone who's watching because they follow the news all day. Why did y'all decide Minneapolis to be the flagship? And
I thought you were going to ask, why did Melania bring out a robot?
Oh, that's my
I thought you were going to ask that.
That's my second question.
Okay.
Minneapolis and then humanoid. Like, why Minneapolis? Yeah. And then let's get into some. We're talking about No Kings, but I would love to talk to you about. There's been a lot of things happening in education news, as of the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
And let's connect it back to No Kings and why it's so important we show up on Saturday.
So, questions asked, like the great social studies teacher you are. So, each of the No Kings has had one event that's been live streamed, as opposed to many events that have been live streamed. This is No Kings is actually a pretty low to the ground movement. And so there's lots of events, there's lots of rallies, and most of them are devised by people on the ground community groups, indivisible groups, ACLU, Move On, unions, others, who public citizen, who have basically said, this is where we're gathering and this is where we're walking and, signs of hope and, what does the future look like? And because it is a coalition that is basically saying that in a democracy, and you teach this every day. When I taught in Clara Barton, I taught this every day, that we, the people, are the ones who have the standing citizens voting on behalf of their families and friends and themselves, saying, we're voting for X and Y and Z, who is then going to work in the government to help us have a better life. I mean, that is the social contract that was the United States of America, not and that arc bent towards justice. Oh, it's not easy. I mean, the suffragettes movement, not easy. The civil rights movement, not easy, but it bent towards a broadening sense of freedom, economic as well as civil rights.
Right.
And so so if you think about the last few months, what is the place where Donald Trump tried to actually occupy and to actually use in the most maximalist way possible the power of the government to deport, to arrest, to stop people's mobility, to actually tell a state what they can or can't do. And that was Minnesota. And that's why the main event was done in conjunction with the local folks from Minnesota to basically bear witness and to say, no, we have to actually support our neighbors, welcome the stranger, and demand freedom for everyone, both economic freedom and basically economic security, but this basic freedom that you can walk down the street or stay in your home without the government barging in or taking you or killing you because you have a whistle or because you're taking a picture of abusive behavior. And so that it was making common cause with the people who are not only the most vulnerable, but the people who then did mutual aid. That's why Minnesota.
Yeah, it really, they showed us what democracy really looks like in real time. And I still think the word neighbor should be the Webster's Dictionary Word of the Year, because the way that neighbors showed up for each other and the way that they showed us how to be a good neighbor. And another place that is supposed to teach us how to be good neighbors and just know how to navigate in the public square are public schools. That's something that you fight for every day. It's something that I work at a public school. I fight for public schools every day. And you brought up the humanoid, and I'm talking about the robot, the actual robot that made an appearance with our first lady yesterday. And I think there's I'm terrified of the implications. I'm curious. I know that the AFT, you all just gave a statement. I was actually live on a webinar for Share My Lesson when your statement came out. I'd love for you all to share with everyone watching the AFT's position on humanoids, robots, teaching the youth.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Look, it's just can AI be a supplement? Yes, of course. When you and Share My Lesson, you and Kelly Booz have figured out different ways where it can supplement. Can AI reinforce? Can there be one-to-one tutoring like Sal Khan does?
Yes.
But the reason we put that statement out, I didn't see it until last night.
Yeah, me
But
too.
the reason I put that statement out was this. Melania, look, the first ladies can pick whatever they want to pick, and I have no beef with her. She's the first lady of the United States of America. But when you don't actually include any teachers in any real way in any of your AI initiatives, when we are doing one of the most formidable AI initiatives around the country, and I wrote to Trump in December and
Yeah.
said, yes, we disagree on a lot of things, but we do not, this is the most fundamental change in the nation's, in centuries and generations, and you need to work with teachers, and we will work with you if you are willing to work with us. Do you think I heard from him? Of course not.
Of course not.
But so you then think about this. You walk in
Yeah.
with a robot.
Right.
Fine. You want to do show and tell? That's
Cute.
fine.
Cute.
Cute. But then you say that the robot is going to teach children. So at this very same moment, I'm sorry, I'm so angry about it.
No,
At the
I am
very same moment that parents around the country are saying, our kids are on the screen too much.
Thank you.
We need to actually, the screens in the United States are replacing a sense of belonging and connectiveness. We need to find a way. 31 states have now stopped cell phones in schools. We need to find a way to get a better balance than the first lady who is doing nothing about regulation, about safety for children, says, oh no, bring it on.
Yeah.
And so it's completely the opposite of the problems that we need to solve for kids right now. It's kind of economically, people voted for Trump to actually reduce their cost of living and have a better life. And now gas prices are up $1. So it's kind of doing the opposite of what people need or what he said. And so I can only think that it's one of two things. A, she has no idea what teachers actually do and what parents actually need and kids actually need right now. Or number two, it was just a gimmick for the big tech companies that are basically, that are basically running the country.
Yeah. It could be both, right? And our kids are
But-
watching it. I played
But
that.
what
yeah.
I want to say one more thing, but what
Yeah.
it will do
Yeah.
is it will create so much more fear about whether or not we should even be using AI. So
Yes.
it creates the crisis, it creates the problem, as opposed to how do we seize our future and how do we actually regulate the bad of AI, misinformation, disinformation? How do we protect kids' safety and privacy, deal with the algorithm, stop these chat boxes that
Yes.
kids are, that where some kids have died because of these chat boxes? How do we deal with all of that? And then thinking about how we use AI in a way to facilitate or to help with problem solving and the work that we need to teach kids. This, by doing this, we're now going to one more time have the conversation. Does AI, does tech replace teachers? Answer, no.
It's
It
pretty
can't
simple. Yeah,
replace it.
It can't, right? It's boring, but it's also terrifying that it's even part
Yeah.
of the conversation still.
Yeah.
I mean, and going back to No Kings, I mean, what I think is so the kids were asking me today, why, what's the point, right? We've done 2 of these. He's still in power. It's getting worse. What's the point? And I think it connects to what you're talking about, which is the importance of human beings connecting with one another.
Exactly right.
So what would you? That's what I said to my students. It's a way to galvanize. It's a way to remind each other of our values as a nation. What would you say to my students if they were so lucky to have you there to answer that question today?
Well, they're pretty lucky to have you. So what I would say is this. My lesson plan would be, how do I tie in the purpose of democracy and the architecture of democracy and the steps of democracy with their needs and aspirations? Because what democracy isn't is a magic wand. You have to work it. You got to develop the muscle. And what No Kings is doing is developing the muscles until we get to November 2026, which is actually the first time that your kids' parents, assuming they are citizens of the United States of America, can actually vote and say and express their willingness to say, yes, they want this to go forward the way it is, or no, they want it to change. And in a democracy, our democracy, the way in which we do that is through every 4 years, the vote for the president, and every 2 years, the vote for the legislature, which is both the check and balance of the president, but also the way that the president leads through the making of law. The courts, which are supposed to do balls and strikes, they can only do so much. They can basically say, no, that's the law right now. I mean, yes, that's the law right now, or no, that isn't the law. But it is really, just like in elections, it is people who power a democracy. And whether it is standing on the streets, as as Abraham Lincoln said, that public opinion is everything.
Yeah.
It's not just that day in a voting booth. It's what is the public opinion? What do we think about this? What do we need to do with each other about this? Is this what we think is right? Oh, wow. It's not just us who don't think it's right. It's my neighbor.
Yes.
It's my classmate. That's what No Kings is a demonstration of public opinion. And it is part of the architecture of a democracy about saying, do we want this or do we want something else? So it's a really important step in the march towards voting, towards emancipation, towards elections.
That's beautiful. That is so
Mhm.
beautiful. And Joe, what do you think of that?
I
Wow.
I want to cry. I wrote. I
too.
have. I'm one of those geeks who writes everything down on
Yeah,
an iPad.
I have my post. I get. I'm going to ask Randy. Well, we haven't recorded. I'm playing that clip for my students. It's
Yeah,
like,
Tell me
yeah.
what they think.
I will. I will. But they were having a debate about it, a really interesting debate about protest and democracy and its place. Most of them agreed, but they're frustrated.
Yeah.
They're seeing that. I mean,
Because everybody
yeah.
wants it now. But
Yeah.
in a democracy, you actually, part of the reason that we have not had a king for 250 years is that it's frustrating because it's slow, because it takes the majority, and we don't vote every other minute. We do it every 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say back to the screen conversation, and by the way, Sari, just Kiss and the robot. Well, I mean, what we've seen, again, 17-year-old son, almost 17, and 12-year-old, almost
Yeah.
13-year-old daughter, what we've seen is the impact of screens on the way
Yeah.
that they process the delivery system for what they want. Because in Grand Theft Auto or Minecraft
Yeah.
or any of the other games, they get it instantaneously. You know,
Right.
you want something, and it's just and that hardwires their brains that are still forming right now. So democracy
right.
is very frustrating. My son is constantly like, what's the point? What's the point? I hear that all the time. And it's
Yes.
that
Yes.
apathy scares the shit out of me because I'm like, no, we can't be apathetic. But when you combine all those forces together and you have these impressionable future, hopefully voters and citizens, this idea, Randy, I wrote it down, this muscle, that democracy is not a magic wand. It's a muscle that
Exactly.
you have
It's a
to
muscle.
train. And that's what the point of these marches
Yeah, just
is.
like if you were running in a marathon,
Yes.
you're not going to run 26 miles the first time. You got to train.
Yeah.
And we have to be the muscle of democracy. We have to be the muscle of the people. And that is how we're practicing it.
And getting out on the streets is the way to
Yeah.
do it. We're on
Right.
our screens. I'm just as guilty. We're all guilty of this.
Me
And
too.
and there's for people watching who have not marched yet or scared to get out there, you will just, I mean, talk about, I get emotional every time.
Yeah.
The sea of people from young to old and in between. I like to say I'm in
To
between.
see
Yeah.
exactly what you just said, Sari and
Yeah.
Joe, to see people who are different than us
Yes.
saying, wait a second, that's what not what America is.
Yeah.
You can be conservative. You can be liberal. You can believe in unions or not believe in unions. You can believe in public education or not, but what you believe, but everybody who's out there is saying, no, we have to be about human beings, about basic dignity, and about the fact that in the United States of America for 250 years, we said it's the people that make the decision. Even the president, he has to listen to the people. It's not his decision alone. And to have a sea of people around America saying, we believe today what our forefathers, look, there weren't too many foremothers, but what our forefathers believed in 250 years ago, that's pretty cool. And that's what we're going to see on March 28th. Nonviolent, peaceful protest, conservatives, liberals, rural, suburban, old, young, just saying that same thing. No kings here.
Wow. That's a perfect place too.
Ooh,
And
thank
oh my
you.
gosh,
Thank
very
you.
inspiring. Thank you, Randy Weingarten. Thank you, Sari Beth Rosenberg. It was
so
wonderful
much.
to see you both. Please stay safe and have fun
Thank
on
you.
Saturday and keep us up to date on where you are, what you're doing. Sari, I might come see you. I'm
Oh,
still
I'll
toying with that
fantastic.
idea.
come to New York. Yay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
both
you,
so much.
Joe. Thank you,
Thank
Sari.
you.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you. My first ever protest sign was at the was in 2017, and I think it was this. If I hope I don't mess it up, it was the power of the people is much stronger than the people in power. And just to pick up on what Randy and Sari were saying, which was incredible, it is so true. And some people just take these things for granted and have taken them for granted like it was gravity, and we can't do that anymore. So with that, I have another video from the incredible Seneca Project. You guys have to go to Seneca Project US. Again, nobody makes content better than them. Nobody. So let's play their new video, No Forever Wars.
No new wars. We don't need the wars.
The United States launched Operation Epic Fury in Iran.
The president posting wars can be fought forever.
This is a war of choice by President Trump.
We don't need another endless war.
He's bombing all around the world, kidnapping presidents of other countries. This has to end.
No one man can decide who to go to war with.
Trump is acting unilaterally.
He never asked Congress. He never asked us.
We, the people of the United States, are here to tell the Trump administration, you may wage this war in our names, but not with our consent.
No kings! No kings! No kings! No kings! No kings!
Every one of their videos gives me chills like that. I don't know. It's hard to pick a favorite. But my hair is standing straight up. So inspiring. Fucking love Jane Fonda, by the way. But we're going to talk about this new potentially forever war that Donald Trump promised he would never get us into, and he has, with our next guest, Corbin Trent, progressive organizer, former communications director for AOC, and national strategist for Bernie Sanders. We talked about Bernie Sanders a minute ago. I don't know if you caught that. No Kings Knoxville attendee. Hi, Corbin. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Joe?
Well, I'm well. I can tell you what, I as this night has gone on, I am more fired up and like more like you ready, it feels like it's catharsis. It feels like medicine. And that's the power of community. And that's the power of using our voices and reminding ourselves and each other that we were the ones that were always going to save us in this moment. But welcome. How are you?
I'm well. I'm excited for Saturday. I'm getting these things get me pumped up as well. I'm glad to see people organizing and getting excited about politics. I mean, it is like Randy was just saying, it's a warm up for 26, and I hope the Democrats are paying attention too, and I hope they see the energy that's out there.
Yeah, so do I. You said you're going to be in Knoxville. I have former in-laws that were, one was a teacher in Knoxville. And what's the energy going to be like in Knoxville?
I mean, so I think the first one brought out 7,000 people, and it's the city, for context, is like 100,000. So, you're looking at like 7% of the population. And I'm actually going to be at 3. So there's one in Knoxville, which will be the biggest. It'll probably be 10,000 people. And they just line the street and take over the streets, and it's just this array of people, young, old, babies, grandmothers, people, that's funny. Like you see people that have been there, like, it ain't their first rodeo kind of thing. Like they
Yeah.
bring the sweatbands and like the ice cube, they got their whole thing down. So if it's going to be hot, they're ready for it. So you've got what I would call the old hippies that have been in this game for a long time. And then you've got the college kids, you've got people that it's obviously their first time out. I always go out and talk to people. So, I go out and see what brought them out there, why they're excited. Why would they, is this their first time doing something like this? And most of the people I talk to, it is their first time doing something like this. It's certainly, galvanizing more and more people in my community. But then I'm going to be going to a much smaller town called Loudon, which is a town of, 4,000. And it turns out several hundred people, so it's really quite odd. You've got these, where I'm at in East Tennessee, in the middle of Appalachia, is deeply red. I mean, I think it's sometimes 80-20, sometimes 70-30, but it's deep, deep red. It has been for, 100 and some odd years. But what's interesting is this is also the birthplace of like the Highlander Center, which is where a lot of the civil rights protesters and civil rights leaders went to train on nonviolent organizing techniques and that sort of thing. So, one of the things I always say about East Tennessee is that it brings out extremes. Right. You do have the MAGA, don't tread on me, folks every which where. But then you've also got the people that sort of are the antithesis of that. And so that's, you see a little bit of everything. And you even see some Trump people down there. It's crazy that are, or former Trump people, I guess you would say, that are just done with it, ready to move on to something else. And there is so much energy in this country right now. And there's so much energy for change. There's so much energy. It reminds me of the first time I got excited about politics was Barack Obama's campaign back in 2007, right? And there was all this energy for transitioning, for, a national healthcare system, for all this stuff, right? And right now we're seeing, I think we're getting to see a little bit of a reflection of the country we've been through Trump, because he removes a lot of the masks and veneers. We've done these forever wars this is not the first interventionist war that we've taken on in the Middle East. It's just the most recent, right? I mean, Iraq obviously should have been an example to us. Before that, obviously Vietnam, Libya, Syria. Like this is, par for the course of the United States. But sort of like in Trump's first administration, when he was doing the child separation stuff, it allowed us to see these policies without the the rosy glasses of our political preferences. We're like, oh, our guy's in, or our team's in, so we're not going to get upset. And I hope it sticks this time. I hope that a lot of the things that are consistent through presidencies, that are indeed driving us towards kingdom like actions when it comes to especially military power, right? That's one of the, for decades and decades, Congress has been sort of abdicating this role because they didn't want the responsibility. So I'm excited about it. And I think that's what a lot of people are out there to talk about. That's what people, they're there to talk about affordability. They're talking about wars, and they're talking about college and daycare. So it's exciting to be around them.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about we watched the Seneca Project video. Let's talk about the impact of this war, right? Because this is sort of the intersection of the things that he promised he wouldn't do, right? He was a peace president, which is laughable, but it's also a betrayal, right? That I've heard plenty of MAGA bros, Joe Rogan, et cetera, mentioning that this is one of those things where if they'd listened and paid attention, of course, sadly, they didn't, but that they feel betrayed, that this is a promise that he made, but it's also intersecting with everything being more expensive, which was another promise that he made, that he said everything would be less expensive. That's one of the big things he ran on and all. Of course, they said, no, eggs are too expensive. He's going to bring down the cost of eggs. So there's this new, interventionist war in a country a lot of people don't even know where it is, let alone why we're there. And at the same time, our lives have gotten exponentially more expensive. So, and of course, there's Epstein, which is still hanging out there as something people are still talking about across the board, regardless of politics. So how do you think these things, in particular this war, how is it impacting people down there in Knoxville, et cetera, and these folks that are going to turn out, and maybe some Trump voters that might show up, like you said?
I mean, so it's interesting, like, the polling, and there's this sort of like jujitsu they're trying to do with the polling, where they'll be like, MAGA supports this 100%.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, if I say, do you support the president 100%? Yes. Then, okay, do you support this war 100%? Yes. Right. Well, obviously that's going to be a large, I mean, yeah, it'll be 100%. You're basically, making a poll that doesn't make sense. But when I talk to people, like you can't walk down the street without finding a Republican here. It's just what they are.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, they think that spending more time, more blood, more soil, or, more death of our people, more death of their people, more money doesn't make any sense. They want to see these, they want to see us working to rebuild people's ability to make a living, see us rebuild people's futures. And, for whatever reason, a lot of people believed that Trump could do that. They thought that he had enough disdain for the system to tear down the barriers that are, in the way of them in a quality of life. They thought that he had the sort of, I don't know, the rugged individualism maybe, and just the sort of disdain for the system that was required to dismantle it. But they, I think, really underestimated his greed, his cynicism, and his just, his mono focus on himself. But that is coming clearer here. So you talk to people in Knoxville, you talk to people where I'm at in Lenore City, Loudon. So it's this little stretch of small towns in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and people aren't having an easy time. I mean, right now I live in a town of like, I don't know, 15, 20,000 people, and a studio apartment here costs about $1,250 a month. And people on average make about $38,000 a year. So, you make that math work. So what you get is people living with their parents longer, living with roommates longer, and it's not, so it's not working for people. The change they hoped that they would get over these last 10 years through Trump and then the little break we had in between is proving to not be the change that they thought they'd get. So I think we've got a real opening.
Yeah.
A real opening in 26. I mean, we just, I was in Tennessee 5 for the Afton-Bain race. I don't know, if you followed that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I mean, she overperformed. She, like so many other places across this country. And what's happened is the Republicans, in my mind, have overplayed their hand. They've carved up districts like Tennessee 5, where it used to be a solid blue district, and they carved it up into 3. A couple more points, and there's lots of places that are in play. And there's districts that are worse than that, where they carved up to their own detriment, even worse than Tennessee 5 and 7. So, and then we've got all these new districts that have been created. I think we're going to end up with net gains in seats out of this probably. So I'm excited to see so many people mobilizing towards a goal of slowing this train down, and excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the military component here, and I have a almost 17-year-old son, and one of the things that I think about is my God. I did not expect my son to potentially be signed up for a war in Iran or somewhere else, God forbid, and it, while it may have been a complete and total abstract, and somebody a few years ago would have told me that I was being hyperbolic and histrionic and that I should calm down. That's what they probably would have said. This is a reality. They're not saying definitively they will not employ. And Donald Trump doesn't care. I mean, how many times does he have to tell folks that he doesn't care? Unfortunately, like you said, it didn't stick after the last time when he was golfing while thousands of our fellow citizens were dying a day and ending up in refrigerator trucks. And while everybody was in these food lines and he was golfing, again, not caring. He doesn't care. Everybody in this country is expendable to him. This is a real palpable concern for a lot of people, certainly for me as a mom of a high school young man. You know what I mean? This is one of those things I feel like people should be talking about more. And it just also exemplifies and demonstrates the fact that he doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of them. He doesn't care about any of us.
No, I mean, it's like the video you were playing earlier from Seneca that, there was no authority for this. There was no, like one of the things I find really enraging, I guess, from time to time is that I'm told that the Iranians have killed so many Americans, right? They're doing this like 47-year long war framing, right? Yeah. And so where I'm from, the Sackler family and Oxycontin have killed way more Americans than the Iranians have, a whole lot more, and destroyed more families. Now, not only are they not in jail, not only are they not broke and destitute, but there's still buildings with their names on them all over this country, right? So, I find this sort of, it's obviously that, and it's clear that they're doing this as a really lack of vision, no creativity way to mess with China. And, I don't want my high school son going there and fighting China through Iranian proxies, like that's not something that I'm willing to give my family for, my life for, or, I don't think he should be asked to take other people's lives for that. And yeah, so the hubris with which he is approaching war, and, I guess he got high on his own supply with the Maduro kidnapping. He thought, well, this went well. People like this.
Yeah.
I'll just do some more of that stuff. And then they did the bombing of the nuclear sites, and that was easy peasy, no big deal, they thought. And so he just he's like addicted to these things.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how bored he is right now?
Right.
I mean, which is irritating, but can you imagine how bored he is? Like, he's like, I'm over this whole Iran thing.
Well, where else can I go next? I mean, this is why we have this stupid something of the shield of the Americas that Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski are on now, where it's the Don Roe doctrine, where you've seen all of the Americas painted with the American flag. And we have Denmark preparing Greenland for invasion from us, because you can't actually dismiss his musings as just maniacal musings of a crazy person anymore, because there's no guardrails, there's no adults in the room anymore, and he can do and has done whatever he wants. I mean, we have 2 Marine forces and the 82nd Airborne heading into the Gulf right now because there's no checks on him. Congress certainly has self-gelded themselves to the point where they're not a fucking option. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. He's bored. That's why he's slapping his name on everything from the Kennedy Center to our fucking money. Sorry.
Money now, right?
Our money.
So much on the yeah. And I mean, that's the funny thing, right? I mean, it's like nobody's ever done X. Nobody's ever done Y. No president's done, all these things. No president this, no president that. And that's when there's no precedent for things. He's willing to do them, right? And then it's easy to say, I'm going to ignore Supreme Court orders because you've got 1 or 2 precedents for that. Right. So, hey, I'm just going to follow Abraham Lincoln's example. So the courts aren't being able to rein him in. The Congress, as you said, done jack shit to do that. Right. Yeah. So, it comes down to, I think, the way out, the thing that I'm hoping we can do more of as we go through 2026 and through this, through more of these sort of No Kings protests and bigger protests in general, is that we can start seeing a formation of a different path forward, a new vision for America, because this has been a very destructive period of time for us. A lot of the, like you're mentioning the fact, people aren't sure if America is going to invade Greenland. That's kind of nuts, right?
Yeah.
That's a sentence that you can say, and it's real, So the damage that's going to have to be repaired to our, to our relationships, to our, to our global, the way people see us globally, it's just going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be a lot of trust building, again, rebuilding trust. And not for nothing, there's the number of people that are in positions in our government now that are election deniers or this or that. I mean, we thought the revolving door with Wall Street was bad. These folks are genuinely nuts, right? We got one guy that's teleporting himself. Have you read about this guy, right?
Yes.
It's scary. He tells us genuinely, teleporting is very scary. You're driving in your car, next minute you're in a Waffle House, but
teleporting to a Waffle House sounds like a cover band slip.
I've been teleported to a Waffle House a few times too. But it turned out when I saw the camera footage, I wasn't teleported. I actually walked in there. But so there's going to be my point is that there's going to be so much cleanup, cleanup on aisle America. There's so much stuff to fix now. But the good news is we get to rebuild it better. What was that thing they said? Build back better.
Better. I love it. Yeah.
We can do that. We actually can.
This is the thing. It's kind of been brought down to the studs, and one of our first guests, Kelly Robinson, the Human Rights Campaign president, she talked about this as an opportunity, and it is strange framing, but it is nonetheless. When you're knocked down to nothing, you do get a chance to rebuild it in a stronger, more resolute, more fair, more equitable way. And that's again why these No Kings rallies, these protests are so important. It's why what people did in Minnesota is so important. That's why these kinds of conversations are so important, and that's why I can't stop with the rallies, etc. This is just a public display, not just. There's no just here. It is a public display of what we need to be doing every single day to rebuild this country and to make sure that it doesn't fall prey to these fascists and despots and authoritarians. So I'm grateful for you being in this fight. I'm so glad to get to talk to you and get to meet you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. I hope we see some of your content from all the places you're going to be in Tennessee. I have family from Greenville. I have ex-in-law
Oh,
family
wow.
from Greenville.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been
Been around
there.
a lot of time.
I have a lot of love for the people from Tennessee. So thank you so much, Corbin. It's great to talk
Thank you,
to
Joe.
you.
Thanks for what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Thank you so much. That was that I needed a little infusion of some swearing on there. Sorry about that, everybody. But that made me feel a little better. Sometimes maybe swearing will help. Sometimes it does. Sometimes that's just the medicine that you need. And he's awesome. We're going to bring in our next guest and sort of shift gears here a little bit because this is important too. Very important. We're bringing in Priya Ray, host of the ADA Virtual No Kings event. This is so important, Priya. It's so nice to meet you. Priya is the founder of DIY Abled, a nonprofit started to educate people about disability and accessibility. Hi, how are you? Oh, I think you're muted, Priya.
Right. I muted myself because I was like, "Oh, I was talking and it didn't." And I was like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Hey, how are you? This is such an important component here because I've talked about this many times. I was a paraprofessional for autistic preschoolers for almost 7 years of my life, and be the abled and disabled was something that we always said. And this is something that does not get brought up in the conversation often enough across the board. And this is so important because there are a lot of people who cannot get out and march. So let's talk about that. And thank you for doing this. What can they do?
Well, my virtual No Kings is based. We talk about disability rights because currently in this administration, a lot of people don't understand what it means for disabled people to have cuts in the Department of Education or to have Medicaid cuts. These are all lifelines to the disabled community. And like you said, you were teaching preschool, I believe you said
Yeah.
autistic. And when an autistic child is in school, they get something that's called accommodations. So, like when you hear in the news that that they've cut the Department of Education, what that means is that the resources have been cut. So therefore, it's hard for these Section 504 rules to be applied, which, if you don't know what Section 504, it was a law passed in 1977 that said anything that gets federal funding, so schools, uh, government offices, buses, anything that gets federal money cannot discriminate against disabled people. So public schools, they have to accommodate a disabled child to learn. So when you cut funding for the Department of Education, you're cutting the resources, and then it's harder for kids to get accommodations to learn, and then it's harder for them to fight against that discrimination. And so then let's move to healthcare. So Medicaid, if you can't, they're making cuts to things like home health care, which the disabled community rely upon. And when those things aren't there, then people are unnecessarily institutionalized. And this is like what disabled people fight against, because if they don't get these rights, then institutionalization is where they end up next. And that's not what we want. So it's very important. So that's why I do these virtual No Kings protests, or any protest that goes on. I do a virtual version because not everyone can leave the house, whether they have chronically ill, whether they can't get out of bed, whether they have chronic pain, and they can't be around so many people. It's not safe for them because if they can't keep up the pace of everyone else, they could get hurt. And
Right.
then if something happens, who knows what could happen. Their safety is not really considered.
Right.
So yeah, it's really important to have disabled voices in the sphere as well.
It's so important. And it's also something that historically Donald Trump has maligned and marginalized further. He's said his own nephew talked about his son and Donald Trump, his son who was suffering from, I don't know what the condition was, but Donald Trump said, "Why don't you just let him die? I don't understand why you keep him alive." His nephew's son. And his view of people with disabilities going all the way back publicly to mocking a reporter, to mocking people with a stutter, etc. Also, Project 2025 outlines so much of what is happening. And I think that he would prefer if people, just like with people who have, amputations from war, out of view, out of public view, institutionalized, he would be fine with that. I think that there is a sustained attack on that community. And I think the education component is critically important, both to people who are, in that community, but also people who just don't realize, because it doesn't impact them directly, so they wouldn't know. So that's why it's so important to shine a light on what is happening, and then to give people something that they can do, actions they can take, that can help fight what he's doing and help sustain this community and fight for more access to more services.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because if we're going to talk about Project 2025, from my viewpoint, it seems they just don't want to pay money for things. They don't want to
Right.
have to, they want to keep money for themselves and
Mhm.
not give it for people in society. But if you're sending people to war, let's just put that's a disabling event. So when people come back from war, should they not get support to live, to earn money, to live in a place, to eat food, to get health care, to have their kids educated? Yes, of course. And the cost of supporting a disabled person doesn't always have to cost. It's just medical care, institutional care is actually more money than a person from their home who has maybe a caregiver that the state pays for through Medicaid. That's less money than having a person staying in a medical facility for, I don't know, it could be 20 years, depending on how disabled or undisabled or not disabled a person is. So, yeah, it's a serious thing. What really bothers me is the education aspect and the healthcare aspect. All of it really bothers me. But
Mhm.
when you don't educate a group of people, then they have no way to support themselves. And
Right.
so you have to educate people. You can't take that away from them. And so that's what this administration is trying to do, is they're not taking, it's not being erased, but it's being weakened. And when you do that, then it disappears little by little and unnoticeably, except
Right.
unless you're disabled, of course.
Right.
So yeah, it's a horrible fate to put people in. And it's not a fate. It's just a decision. It's a choice to decide what to do with a certain group of people.
Right. And historically, we've seen this in playbooks, throughout the course of history. This is, I know history may not repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. And a
Right.
lot of people, again, I understand, in terms of what we're all living our lives, but this is a humanity issue. And it's also first they came for, right? Like anybody who thinks if it starts with this group of people who've been marginalized and pushed to pushed out to the edges and ignored and institutionalized or stripped of any opportunities or any resources, it's not going to end. It never ends with that one group. It eventually it will always come knocking on your door, and then there'll be nobody left to help you. There'll be nobody left to speak out for you. And so we are a big community, and we need to uplift all of these voices and remember our humanity, because this is a existential threat right now to our country, and what happens to one of us happens to all of us. So I'm so grateful for your voice and for shining a light. Where can people go to join your live stream?
Well, I should update my website, which I will do right after I get up here, because I kind of do everything by myself. So I'm like, I always forget to update the website. I use Instagram. So if you do have an Instagram account, you can look up DIY Abled. And I have a link tree. I think it's linktree/DIY Abled. So you can find all the links. Fortunately, it's not a bad problem. We are at capacity for our virtual thing.
Oh, wow.
We have, I think about 800 people have signed
Holy
up.
moly.
So it's kind of like, I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So, but that's why I decided I'm going to cast the Zoom meeting onto my YouTube live, so that all of if you go to the link tree DIY Abled, you'll find the YouTube link, how to join my email list for future things. And yeah, so it's just, I always say disabled people are people, so we should, treat them as people.
You know what? It seems like a simple concept, doesn't it? And yet on so many levels, when you boil down what's happening, what they're doing, they really do want to dehumanize so many. That is really what it is. They want to other so many. It's they, them, those people who are somehow a threat to something that people hold dear. I mean, whether it's the trans community, or whether it's the Hispanic community, or whether it's the disabled community, whatever it is, they need to other people and dehumanize them in order to give themselves more power. And again, history may not repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. But we remember the people in this chat, the people who will be marching, the people who are showing up, the people who've joined this call, the organizers, the activists, the content creators. We're showing up because you're people. We are all people, and we are in this fight together, because there's no planet B, there's no America B at the moment, there's no democracy B, and we have to stick together. We need to have each other's backs.
Yeah, definitely. And, I always tell people, if you're lucky enough to become an older person, then you will be disabled somehow. So disability is part of the human experience. So there's no othering. Disabled people are human people. So there's no othering there. So
that's absolutely true. It's very true, and it's only a matter of time for me. Like I have glasses now. I have been lucky enough to reach the almost age of 52, and so I can see most of the time, but like to really read the chat, I have to put my glasses on. So once upon a time, I had 20/20
I
vision.
have to put my glasses on, and this is a accessibility tool, the glasses, but it's just kind of over time it's become a fashionable, or whatever, or just kind of normalized. But it's like it's just like a wheelchair for the eyes.
Exactly. Right. And Donald Trump likes to brag about his dementia test, so I don't think that's a stone he should be throwing through those glass walls of his. Yeah, congratulations on identifying an elephant correctly, Donald Trump. Thank you so much, Priya. It was so great to talk to you.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me. And everybody speak up for themselves. This is what we're about now.
And for each other. And for each other.
Oh yes,
okay. And for each other. No, don't be sorry. That's what we're here to do, right? That's what No Kings is about, and that's what Minneapolis has modeled, and that's what you do every day. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice one.
You too. And with that, wonderful conversation that absolutely filled my cup. We are going to close the show by bringing in my dear friend Tara Setmayer, co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project, the party responsible for the incredible videos we've been playing tonight. We have one last video, but I am so happy to see you, my friend. Hi, how are you?
Hello. I've missed you, Joe. It's only been, a few hours since I saw you last.
Yes. This has been every conversation I've had tonight. Like, I talk about filling my cup all the time, and right now the Siren Network cup is filled with delicious water. I swear to God, that's water in there. But honestly, every conversation I've had, and just the umbrella of this being about what we can all do together in this moment, in this galvanizing moment, whether it's marching or attending virtual rallies or just having conversations, and then what comes the day after, and then after that, and after that, and Randy Weingarten talking about how democracy isn't a magic wand, it's a muscle, and these protests are part of exercising that muscle to ready us for the fights ahead. So I would love to just, first of all, congratulations on these incredible videos. Every single one of them. I know I tell you this all the time, but like for real, the hairs stand up even when I think about them. The best freaking videos there are. But also just wanted to get your thoughts on everything.
Well, first of all, thank you. And thank you for always advocating for us and being such a huge supporter of Seneca. You know, it's women supporting women, and it's so important that we do that and lift each other up. And the challenges of being a women-led organization, and we don't get the same support financially or anything else as some of these other organizations do, because it's just more difficult for women. That is systemic, and we're trying to change those things.
Yep.
But it's also important for people to see that women are capable of putting out content that they don't expect, right? Like, shout out to our editing teams, Atlas Creative and New York Betty, both women-led editing teams. So, we practice what we preach here. And it's important that people see that, no one's going to tell us that women can't do anything. Okay.
Right.
We do what the fuck we want, and we do it well and better than most. So, thank you for that. And, it's being a part of this whole No Kings movement is really just, it's simpatico with what we do at Seneca, with what I do every day. Like, we're all animated by saving our democracy. It's true. Randy Weingarten was right. Like, you have to exercise that muscle. But it's like, what do I always say, Joe? Democracy doesn't defend itself.
Right.
Right? Like, the democracy doesn't work if you have an uninformed, apathetic citizenry. And what the No Kings marches demonstrate is that there are a lot more of us than there are of them.
Yep.
As we both say, and people are finally starting to wake up. And Donald Trump talked about waking up a sleeping giant. Maybe, but that giant isn't the real giant they need to be afraid of. They need to be afraid of we the people, the majority. And that's the rest of us. And it just takes activating people. People just need to know. And unfortunately, a lot of people are obstinate. They're thick-headed. And until they pay enough of a price, they don't change. So the country is paying a huge price. We tried to spare the country from what we're going through now. We tried. Lord knows.
Yeah.
But sometimes, as my husband's family from the South says, a hard head makes a soft behind. And right now, America's soft ass is getting its ass kicked by Donald Trump and MAGAs when what they're doing. And we're time to say enough is enough.
Yeah, we need to be the salve that comes in and soothes those red behinds.
That's right.
Right. One of the ways we do that is by showing up. And Randy said something else too, that these marches are a demonstration of public opinion. Do we want this, or do we want something else? And I think about this all the time. Like, is this who we want to be? And I think you're absolutely right. And when you say this all the time, it really resonates, because there are more of us than there are of them. And ultimately, and I will die on this hill, and y'all can call me naive. You can call me whatever you want. You can call me foolish. I don't care. But I actually believe, as much as I know that we have a capacity for cruelty that is shocking, I actually believe that for the most part, we are not what Donald Trump is modeling. We are not the kind of people who want to mock someone with a stutter or someone with a disability. We are not the kind of people who say out loud, I am embarrassed by people who have been wounded in war. We are actually not those people who want starving children to be hungry all day long, that will go all the way to the Supreme Court to make sure that they can't eat. I actually think at the end of the day that our humanity is stronger than they want us to believe, and that when they
Yes.
divide us and pull us apart, it helps them drive that narrative when the opposite is the truth, because the opposite is the end of them. It's the antidote to everything they are doing. And that's why these marches are such a symbolic illustration of the fact that we remember that we are a community. We remember our humanity.
Yes, it's you're so right, and you profoundly said that, because that is exactly the threat, that our humanity and our collective humanity and goodness and that American exceptionalism that so many of us believe in this country and what this country stands for, that is what they are afraid of.
Yeah.
That freedom and that goodness is a threat to authoritarianism. And that's why they try to flood the zone with shit, as Steve Bannon would say, to try to weigh us down, and so that we are no longer in tune with each other like that. It's almost
Mhm.
like, remember, we're Gen Xers. Remember Ghostbusters 2, when the sludge was under the city
Yep.
and it responded to negativity,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what fueled it, right?
Mhm.
That sludge is MAGA. And at the end, what happened when New Yorkers came together
Mhm.
with positive vibes? What happened? It overtook the negativity of the sludge.
Yeah.
That is us, right? That is us. They want us to be divided. And so as long as we are unified, that poses a threat to their authoritarian plans. Same thing with kings and monarchs. That's why they would keep people divided by class and by, the serfs and people who were lords versus this one, or property owners. And when our country was founded, they were like, no, we the people. They wanted people to be equal under the inalienable rights of what God has given us, not what man has given us. So as imperfect as our union was and still is, the goal here is to become a more perfect union. It is the America, and the idea of America has always been a living, breathing work in progress. And so now it is our time, it's our opportunity to right this ship, because the ship was taken on water. But we have the opportunity to right that ship. And these No Kings protests are an example of what happens when the righteous anger of the American people comes together to stand up. But we have to be prepared. We have to be ready. Nothing ever worth it is easy, first of all. And secondly, throughout our history, the inflection points of America have always been rooted on freedom movements. And we are in that point again, where this is a freedom movement. That's what this is about. It's freedom from the clutches of the malignancy of Trumpism and the authoritarianism that comes with that. We are saying not no, but hell no. And therefore, it starts with people galvanizing together to at least say that much. We can argue over other stuff later, but we all have to be in one voice right now on what type of country we want.
Yeah. And one of the things that they so often try to co-opt in this narrative of theirs is that these protests are un-American, that we hate America, right? You and I have had this conversation 1,000 times. Like, we came from very different, ideological and political backgrounds, but we align on this thing, and no one will ever take this from us. No,
Nope.
I know I can speak for you on this. I love this country. I love the promise of this country. My father came here as an immigrant, as a teenager, and he believed in the promise of the United States of America, and he instilled that belief and that love in me. And yes, you're right, it's been imperfect, and it has certainly been a different adventure for a lot of folks, and it's been for somebody like me. I can acknowledge that, right? I understand
Right.
that.
Of
We have
course.
so much work to do. We have had so much work to do, but we actually love this country very much, and we want her to be the strongest she can be. We want her to be the most equitable and fair place that she can be, and we want to come together to celebrate our democracy that is we have to work for it, and we have to show up for it.
That's right.
But they will tell you that these No Kings protests are un-American, and one of the things that you have done so brilliantly, as always, is one of the video we're going to end with, This Land. If you want to talk about that, it's
Yes.
again,
It's a
made
perfect
me
segue, Joe.
full on cry. Made me full on cry because I'm a sucker for fireworks. I cried during the national anthem. I am that person,
Yeah.
and you can fault me for it. I don't care. I'm always going to be
No.
this person. But this video is so powerful. It's so important. It's such an incredibly a critical reminder that this is the opposite of not loving America. This is the exact embodiment of loving America, that using our voices to stand up and fight for this country, that is to
Mhm.
love something. You love something, you want it to be the best it can be. So let's talk about This Land, the video.
Yes. So this is like a perfect segue because you talked about how you are the daughter of an immigrant. And, my great grandparents came through Ellis Island escaping Germany. They were German Jews in the 1920s. My grandmother's family came from Italy. My biological father's family escaped the revolution in Guatemala in the 50s. So, we embody the quintessential 20th century American story. My grandfather fought in World War II. He before he passed, when he was in the hospital, I used to ask him to tell me stories about what it was like
Hmm.
when he was a kid in high school and what it was like getting drafted. And he went at 17. He lied about his age
My
and
God.
went at 17. As a matter of fact, I stood on the pier in upstate New York, in Piermont, New York, if anyone knows where that is, in Rockland County, where my grandfather shipped off to go to World War II. Like, my mom was like, "This is where Gramps left to go to World War II." And I was like, "Oh
Wow.
my gosh," she wasn't born yet, but she remembers the stories. And my grandfather would tell me the stories about rationing and how he worked at a local gas station and they would like collect scrap metal and things like that before he went to the war. Like, all of those things, like, marching in the 4th of July parade every year from 1947 until he passed in 2016. I tell the story all the time because that's how I grew up. That's how we
Mhm.
grew up, blue collar, and with America, all from different walks of life, but that's what makes this country great. And my stepdad came to this country at 13 from Yugoslavia, escaping, Yugoslavia, which was a socialist country as well. So don't feel bad, Joe, you're in good company because my stepdad, who was 6'5", okay, and was like a brown belt in Taekwondo. He's a tough guy, but he's a soft, soft, soft interior. He shed tears watching this video because and I didn't know that until he told me actually yesterday when my parents were at
Mm.
my house and we were watching it and or maybe it was Tuesday. I've seen it a million times because I worked on it, right, with our
Yeah.
editing teams to the point of ad nauseum. You got to take a step back sometimes
Yeah.
and look. And after a couple days of not seeing it and watching it with fresh eyes, I was like, yeah, I wish we could have submitted this one for a Webby, but it was past the deadline. So,
Oh, darn it.
the idea of This Land, I think we all as kids grew up with that song, and it's like one of the biggest protest songs ever.
Mhm.
And what we did was when Indivisible came to us to partner with us to do these promos and do these videos, which shout out to them and giving us the opportunity to work with them on it and doing what we do best as storytellers. Um, they had the idea that This Land was just what we wanted. And I said, all right, all right. And we actually took protester footage. So when you hear the singing, that is actual protesters who sang This Land Is Your Land at No Kings protests between June and October, the first two. And our editors were able to put this together and add a little guitar accompaniment to it to make it sound cohesive, but it was a labor of love. It was not easy to do, but we were able to accomplish it. So when you hear the music and you hear the voices, those are actual No Kings protesters. And you might have been, for people watching, might have been at one of those protests singing the song, and then that's your voice. So this is, I think, as you said, a great way to end this. This has been, we're all getting ready to go to our local, there's 3,100. I think you started with Ezra, right?
Yep.
Tonight, right? There's
Yep.
3,100 different no Kings protests. I think you can go to nokings.org to find a protest near you if you don't
Yeah,
know
we
where
have a
one
QR
is.
code too on the screen.
Fantastic. So, everyone can go out there. And if you don't have one in your neighborhood, throw a sign together, go on your corner, bring your family and your dog, and you can still have a voice. You can do it anywhere. You can stand up and do anything you want in this country as long as we still have the freedom to do it. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we'll play us out tonight with This Land.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
This land is your land. This land is our land. From California to New York Island, from Redwood Forest to the ocean waters. This land was made.
People from all walks of life, people that are different, come together and stand for America, democracy, peace, and justice.